در روزهای اخیر تعداد اعدام‌ها در ایران افزایش یافته.
In the recent days, the number of execution and hanging increased more in Iran. Yesterday, 10 people were hanged in Karaj prison. One of them was a school teacher. None of those have had opportunity to have a fair trial. Dr. Mohammad Taheri, who all his activities and the teachings was legally authorized by the government, has been sentenced to death without any trial. Mr. Taheri has said that he has never had the right to defend himself or have a lawyer, and only recently he was allowed to have a lawyer. This means the judiciary system of Iran have decided to execute Mr. Taheri without any trial, and this is the current situation of the judiciary system of Iran. For this reason, I have a special guest in this program, Dr. Ahmad Shaheed, the United Nations Special Reporter in Iran. Dr. Ahmad Shaheed, thank you for accepting our invitation and participating in this interview.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
For the first question, Dr. Ahmad Shaheed, as I explained, this is the current situation of the judiciary system of Iran, which they decided to execute someone without any trial, like Dr. Mohammad Taheri. Would you please give your assessment as a United Nations Special Reporter in Iran regarding the procedure of the judiciary system of Iran, which issued death sentence without any trial?
Well, thank you very much. This actually is a very, very serious issue. I have repeatedly raised in my reports my very serious concerns about the use of death penalty in Iran, both in the absolute numbers of people who are executed or face death sentences, and the range of offenses for which people are given death sentences, along with the fact that, as you highlighted, the issue of what are called unfair trials or trials not meeting the very basic standards of due process rights. So this is a concern that is continuing, and in recent times I have noticed there's been a sharp rise in the number of executions. And the background I just referred to, therefore, is a matter of very serious concern. Dr. Taheri's case is, I think, is a case in point where there have been allegations of serious deficits in fair trial standards. The charges have been very vague and therefore not meeting the required standards on international law, and the alleged offenses do not warrant under international law death penalty. So there are a number of international law violations that are allegedly occurring around the case of Dr. Mohammad Taheri.
What action can the United Nations Human Rights Council take to save the life of political and religious prisoners who have not committed any crime and who are only in prison because of their belief and the way of thinking?
Well, you know, the UN is a body of member states. The Human Rights Council, therefore, also is a body of member states. But it does have a protective function in regard to human rights. And therefore, what the UN can do is raise awareness internationally about the issues at hand, and in this particular case, appeal to the government of Iran to stand or to meet its international obligations. Iran is party to the to basic human rights conventions on international law. The ICCPR is an example. And there are a number of alleged violations of that treaty occurring in a case of a number of trials, including this particular case. So what the UN can do is write to the government of Iran expressing serious concern about the alleged violations of its international law obligations, and then also speak to other members of the Human Rights Council in debates on this subject, to express their concern also on this matter, and to find ways for the government of Iran to explain itself and also to address the issues that have been raised in a very prompt an appropriate manner.
قوه قضاییه ایران به جای تغییر رفتار خودش
The judiciary system of Iran, instead of changing their behavior based on the International Convention on Human Rights Treaty, they accuse you and they make propaganda against you and your reports. They said your report is only based on the opinion of the opposition of Iranian government, when it's clear that your report is based on facts and statistics which is actually published by their own newspaper and media inside of Iran. So my question is how the United Nations Human Rights Council can make the judiciary system of Iran implement their commitment to the international convention which they have signed.
Well, as you know, the Universal Periodic Review brings all countries to the Human Rights Council floor, where they are asked to explain their conduct and then take recommendations from states and to come back with what they have done with them. Now, Iran has had two such reviews, the last one being conducted just late last year. Now, in every case, of course, it's up to the country concerned to implement its own promises. Iran has made a number of pledges to implement rule of law in the country, to abide by its obligations. And in fact, Iran's own constitution requires it to apply rule of law and fair trial standards. Now, when a country keeps on violating the basic rights of their people, then the level of concern in the Council will increase. And if this continues to be the case, then of course there will be even greater scrutiny by the Human Rights Council of what is happening in the country. And it is through that use of persuasion and exposure and awareness creation that the Council will hope that countries like Iran will begin to abide by their obligations with regard to establishing fair trial standards. You referred in a question to what the government says about my reports, and you rightly said that my reports are based on fact. As a case in point, in the case of Dr. Taheri's case, what we are saying is a charge like blasphemy, a charge like corruption on earth are so vague and in any case does not meet the required threshold for capital offense, capital punishment under international law. This doesn't require a statement or a view by Iran's opposition. It's clear as black and white in regard to Iran's constitution, Iran's laws, and how they square up with international human rights standards.
آقای احمد شهید اگر قوه قضاییه ایران
If they don't agree to act based on human rights treaty and the international convention, what will be the action of United Nations Human Rights Council? What kind of sanction they will get?
Well, there are many options that the Human Rights Council has with regard to countries that keep on violating human rights. It is not up to me to suggest or to speculate what those actions might be. But clearly, the Human Rights Council has a mandate to protect human rights, to advance human rights promotion, and therefore a number of tools are at its disposal to try and persuade countries to do more than they are doing right now to protect the human rights of the people. So, I think, once again, of course, because the Council is a body of UN member states, they tend to give states a lot of time to do this. But you would see in the behavior of the Council in the past that there are certain tools that they can use to put more pressure on a country to abide by its human rights obligations.
Dr. Shaheed, what is your suggestion to save Dr. Taheri's life and other political and religious prisoners in Iran?
Well, I think Iran responds to international pressure. You would have seen in the past when the Human Rights Council, for example, took up specific issues that Iran did relent on some of those specific cases. So there is, I think, potential for Iran to look into this case of Dr. Taheri and see how they can review the case, address the issue in ways that respects the human rights obligations of the country. So I think the answer here is that more scrutiny, more international awareness on this subject, and more countries, especially now that Iran is opening up for international engagement, more countries engage with Iran on human rights issues.
در آخر سوال من آقای احمد شهید در ارتباط با
What is your reaction regarding the fabrication and forged document made up to say WikiLeaks has reported to show you have received bribes from Saudi Arabia in order to make a report?
Well, see, WikiLeaks responded very quickly to that charge by saying that, that they were asking if Iranian, or whoever was running this story could link that to any mail or any document that was put up there by WikiLeaks, which there wasn't. So I think that was very quickly cleared up. What concerns me is that there are people within Iran who think that propaganda is more important than addressing human rights issues, and that is distressing. I think it's high time people realized that you can't fool all the people all the time, that if there are issues to be addressed at home, they must be addressed rather than find propaganda tools to undermine those who speak about those issues.
Dr. Shaheed, thank you again for participating in this interview.
برنامه شرکت کردید.
It is a pleasure.